Welcome back to another episode of CedhtheLost, a podcast about CEDH. It's Bailey again, just me. I'm going through another Delulu's trip, another hot take, whatever you really want to call it. I had a few ideas for videos recently, so might as well sit down and record them since I have a little bit of time. The first one we're going to talk about is a hot take. We're going to be talking about Ranger Captain of EOS and why I think it's not a bad card, but a card that you probably don't actually need in your decks. Before we do that, though, there's a little bit of overview I wanted to do. I've been talking to quite a bit of people recently, and they've been saying that their Mox field has been super crowded, with people who have been playing in CDH for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, like I have. It gets a little rough when I had 140 decks, I think it was, on my Mox field. Today, now I have 47. That means I got rid of 100 decks. With that being said, what are some ways you can go about changing that and making it so your Mox field is a little more doable for you? So what I did is I have a certain amount of decks, 5 decks that I have favorited, and these are the decks that I want to keep coming back to, or no, I will keep going back to. So for me, Fibblefip, obviously, I'm the Fibblefip guy. I really like Rogsai. I think it's a really fun list, so I have my Rogsai list here as well. We have my Brainchild, which is going to be an Arden Silas deck. I have a custom art Silas that's really awesome, and Arden's one of my favorite commanders, so obviously I'm going to have a deck for him. And then Blue Garden, or this is a Ludovic Timna, so basically blue farm with a little bit of different cards in it to make it worth running Ludovic. And then Piper, I hardly know her. This is a Piper deck, CDH still. I like the deck. It's a deck I want to go back and revisit eventually. And then we have these folders. We have articles. I write articles. I make YouTube videos when I feel like it. That's what this folder is. I only have 4 right now. And it's the 4 that I did for whatever the name of the set was, the one with the race cars. And then we'll go back. I've been playing Tiny Leaders, and I made 2 lists. I made more lists, but I didn't make a Mox field for them. I'm really bad about that. I've played 6 new decks since the last tournament. Didn't make a deck list for any of them. I've just been maroon over here. Tiny Wieners, Leaders is the name of the folder. You can have fun with it. It's your thing. And then never should see the light of day. These are the decks that I think have legs, or decks that I brought to a tournament at some point, or whatever the reason may be. Or they're copied decks. I have a few of Atlas's decks in here, just in case I want to go back and look at them, get inspiration. Or Brandon, I have a few of his decks in here. Yeah. So I would make folders and then favorite the decks that you actually play all the time. Say you have 3 main decks you normally play. Favorite those. Rest of your decks, throw them in the thing so you're not scrolling up and down over and over and over whenever you're trying to find your deck. Yeah. Second thing, I suppose, is going to be Substack. I have a Substack. The people who are listening to this probably already know. I'll have it in the description. There's going to be an article based around what I say here today about Ranger Captain, but it's going to be written down. So in case you don't want to listen to my 30-minute episode, you can always read it. It's going to be probably 7 to 10 minute read, depending on how deep I go into it. All right. Now let's go into the actual topic. I'm a man of great thoughts, let's say. And one of the negatives with that is I think about things a lot. And one of the things I think about a lot is Magic the Gathering. And when I have those thoughts, sometimes they hurt me. One of those thoughts, one of the famous ones is some of the famous ones, I suppose. Dranith isn't good. Oppo isn't good. Not that these cards aren't good, but that they shouldn't be staples like we were seeing. I made an article about Opposition Agent being a bad card, and that's where Ranger Captain comes in. I think it's a card that's definitely should see play because it is a good card. I just don't think it should see play in every white deck in the form. And hopefully today I can lay out my thoughts in a productive manner and hopefully provide a little bit of discussion in the comments or in person if I see you, and we can have a back-to-back debate, or not even a debate, discussion on the matter. With that being said, might as well read Ranger Captain of EOS just in case for some reason you don't play CDH and you're listening to this video. Ranger Captain of EOS. 1 colorless, 2 white. Creature, human, soldier, ranger. 3/3. Whenever Ranger Captain of EOS enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost 1 or less. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Sacrifice Ranger Captain of EOS. Your opponents can't cast non-creature spells this turn. This card reads amazing, especially in the context of CDH. We'll break it down real quickly. In the context of CDH, everyone's trying to typically use a combo win to win the game. With Ranger Captain of EOS, you're able to cast it for 3, go find a 1-drop, which in the format is most likely going to be an Esper Sentinel or Mockingbird to either copy your Ranger Captain or copy another creature on the board, which is fairly good. But it's the second mode that people play the card most for. It can be used as a defensive way, like if your opponents are cast like an Underworld Breach, you can sacrifice Ranger Captain of EOS, and then they can't cast any more non-creature spells, so it makes it really hard for them to win with an Underworld Breach line. The second way, and typically the most common way we see Ranger Captain used, is we see someone cast it, go get an Esper Sentinel and Mockingbird. Past the turn, people aren't going to try jamming into a Ranger Captain if they don't have a way to like either win on top or win through it. And if they don't have a removal spell, it's going to go back to the player with the Ranger Captain, and then the Ranger Captain's player is going to go on tap, upkeep, sacrifice Ranger Captain. If there's no response there, your opponents have very limited amount of interaction they can use to stop your wins. They have like the channel abilities and like endurance, subtlety. The evoke creatures are like the only real ways to stop people with the Ranger Captain. So it's used as like a silence effect, which we can pull up silence real quick. I'm assuming most of you know what silence is. Oh yes, right here. This is like a very famous card in CDH. 1 white instant, your opponents can't cast spells this turn. It's super simple. Ranger Captain is slightly worse. It's in the fact that it's only non-creature spells. But that's what people use Ranger Captain for. So this card's insane, if we're being real. There's a reason why basically every white deck, unless you're a polymorph deck, is playing Ranger Captain. Why am I saying it's a bad card then? I'm using the lens of TEDH. I think it's a bad card in TEDH in specific with the time limit. A lot of the times when you see a Ranger Captain of EOS, it will be quickly followed up by an opponent copying a Ranger Captain of EOS. And then the game becomes a stalemate where the 2 other players can't push for a win because there's Ranger Captains. And then the people with Ranger Captains can't push wins because there's Ranger Captains. I'm going to pull up Paint and explain it a little bit with a little bit of a diagram. Hopefully you guys can see this. So we have a table. I don't know if that's seeable on your guys' ends. I think it is. I'm going to assume it is. Anyway, so we have this table. We are going to go back to brushes. We have, say, oh, this is miserable. Sorry, guys, I'm not an artist. All right, so we have player 1, player 2, player 3, player 4. If there has to be a better way to do this. If not, oh well. Can I type? Oh, heavens, I can type. This is awesome. Say player 1 has a Ranger Captain, they pass. And then player 2 does nothing. And then player 3 clones Ranger, and player 4 does nothing. we pass to player 1. They can no longer attempt to jam a win. This isn't going to work how I want it to. That's okay. Let's go back here. This player 1, can't jam a win if it's not a creature-based win because of this Ranger Captain right here, which is the first problem. And then let's say we just go back to player 2. Player 2 cannot jam a win. This player can't jam a win because of not 1, but 2 Ranger Captains. But now is an interesting dilemma. Player 2 is incentivized not to jam a win even more, because if he jams a win, player 3 passes priority to player 4, and player 4 is incentivized even more to pass priority to player 1, since player 1 has this Ranger Captain. And then if player 1 sacrifices this Ranger Captain and stops player 2, if player 2 doesn't have a way to stop player 3, player 3 gets to go to untap, upkeep, sacrifice Ranger Captain, and have a protected. Therefore, player 2 cannot go for a win, like ethically, responsibly, without giving the game to player 3, because player 3 is legally obligated, in my opinion, to pass to player 4, and player 4 can either interact to make it so Ranger Captain, player 1's Ranger Captain, can stay around for player 3, which is the correct play in this scenario if player 2 jams. But more realistically, is incentivized to pass to player 1 to sacrifice Ranger Captain. So if he's able to stop player 3's Ranger Captain protected turn, player 4 will go in with no Ranger Captains and less interaction at the table to potentially win. So player 2 shouldn't jam, which I think is pretty self-explanatory. And then we get to player 3 with this Ranger Captain. It's the exact same thing as player 1. If they try to jam, there's a right here, player 1 can just crack the Ranger Captain. This is the most ideal for the table, is that one of either player 1 or player 3 attempts a win just to crack the other Ranger Captain, or puts like a fake win attempt on the stack. So then there will be no Ranger Captains. Hopefully you're all following along. This is the best scenarios if either player 1 or player 3, the ones with Ranger Captains, attempt to win to sacrifice the Ranger Captains to remove them. And then, as I was just talking about previously, if player 4 attempts to win, player 1 is legally obligated, in my opinion, to pass priority since player 3 has a Ranger Captain. Same with player 2. And then this is a crazy dynamic that happens. Where it's just a circle jerk where no one can actually attempt to win until both Ranger Captains are gone. And the only responsible way that can be done is if player 1 or player 3 sacrifices Ranger Captain to make the other one sacrifice their Ranger Captain to stop it. And that's not a play that either Ranger Captain players are willing to make, because why would you use a silence when you're just going to get silenced back? This causes a problem when we have a 80-minute time limit where turns take around 2 to 5 minutes per player, depending on what they're doing in their turn, whether it's attacking, casting spells, or what it is. But if we have a stalemate like this, where neither player can attempt to win until one of them finds removal, or one of these people find removal before their turn for 2 cards, if we're taking, let's just say, on 2 minutes per turn, that's 8 minutes a cycle. That's only 10 turns of the game with Ranger Captains out, but by the time there's Ranger Captains, we could already be 10 to 20 minutes short. So say we're 20 minutes under. That means we have 60 minutes left. 8 minute, that's being like super kind, where everyone's playing at the fastest they can, paying for Ristics, or there's no Ristics on the board. 8 minutes per. That's less than 6 rotations for someone to find 2 counter spells, like 2 removal spells, 1 removal spell, plus the interaction. Like if someone is going to attempt to remove Swords, a Ranger Captain, on someone's end step, and they have a Ranger Captain, say that happens. Player 1 tries to use like a Swords on this Ranger Captain. Player 2 and player 4 are almost incentivized to protect this Ranger Captain, since there's a Ranger Captain here, if they don't have removal. Because if they don't have removal and this Ranger Captain is gone, there's going to be a free silence effect. So you're almost obligated at your player 2 or player 4 to attempt to protect this Ranger Captain from the Swords, so you don't just lose the game to player 1. because why would they be removing it if they're not trying to win the game? So you have less than 6 rotations, in order to find a win once there's 2 Ranger captains, and I promise you it won't happen. The amount of times I've seen a game go to draws because I've seen 2 Ranger captains is immense. And this is just one of the simplest board states. Now let's go to another set of board states with Ranger. Give me 1 second. I've got to delete all this. Perfect. All right, now let's go back here, and then we're here. Let's say player 1 casts Ranger Captain, finds something, player 2 clones the Ranger. Pretty simple. This is a lot simpler than the one I just described. So if player 1 has a Ranger Captain and player 2 has a Ranger Captain, it's pretty simple. That means player 4, let me get my brush back. Player 4 and player 3 can't go for a win. Because there's Ranger Captains here to stop the wins, unless it's a creature-based comp. And since player 4 and player 3 can't present wins because of these 2 players have a lock or a due diligence to make it so they don't sacrifice Ranger Captain for these players. And then say if player 1, let's remove these arrows real quick. If player 1, this guy, attempts to win, player 2 has a Ranger Captain sacrifice. And then this is best case scenario, where they attempt to crack Ranger Captain, they crack Ranger Captain in response. Both players no longer have a Ranger Captain. If player 1 just doesn't use Ranger Captain because there's a Ranger Captain here and tries winning, he gets stopped, still has a Ranger Captain. That's also a fine ability. We just have to make sure that this Ranger Captain doesn't get back to player's 1's turn when they untap and there's no other Ranger Captain stop. And then let's remove this arrow, and then let's say player 2 attempts to win. There's a Ranger Captain, but a little bit different. If this player sacks the cloned Ranger Captain, this player cracks their Ranger Captain to stop player 2 from winning. You open up a window of opportunity, a window for player 3, where player 1 and player 2 just used 2 pieces of interaction for 0 gain. Because this guy thought he was going to win, and then this Ranger Captain player stopped him. And then the window is now open for player 3. Since there's 2 pieces less of interaction at the table than there was before, this is a prime time to jam. And then even if player 3 gets stopped, he doesn't win the game. Player 4's window is so gaping, you can fit like an elephant through this window. If both players use Ranger Captains to try stopping one of them, and then player 3 or player 2 tries winning, player 1 sacks Ranger Captain, player 3 tries winning because he thinks it's a window, gets stopped, player 4 now has an elephant-sized window to try winning the game, which is miserable. So that's the first negative with Ranger Captain, is that no matter where the Ranger Captain is, if it gets cloned, the game's going to end up a draw if people are responsible and know how to actually play against Ranger Captain, because the sequences are terrible. And then the next point I wanted to say is in the current meta, we're a bunch of Gaia's Cradles decks. One thing that doesn't really affect them is Ranger Captain. Everything that they're doing is already on board. They don't need to cast a whole lot of non-creature spells most of the time in order to put a win on this deck. Whether it's draw your deck with a Thrasios, create infinite mana with Kinnan, flip your deck. They don't realistically need to cast spells. They can kill people with a Fairy Mastermind loop on someone else's upkeep with an Endurance loop after the Ranger Captain has been effect. Kinnan can win with creature lines, with Endurance loops, and Fairy Mastermind, where you can make each person draw a card. Once you have enough cards in your hand, you can cast the Endurance either for the evoke cost. Yeah, for the evoke cost. And then you can shuffle it back in, or you can use Green Sun Zenith in someone's upkeep once you have all your creatures out to shuffle it back in, draw cards, killing the table. Same with like Rogthras. They'll get a bunch of mana off their Gaia's Cradle. And then when it's time for you to realistically use the Ranger Captain, you're just going to die with a creature combo, or they'll go find their fairy, like a Flash Enabler, and just winning your upkeep with infinite mana. And then you're in the same spot you were before. So I just don't think it does enough at the moment. The next thing, it's really hard to cast if we're being realistic. If it's colorless white, which is miserable in 4-color decks. I don't think it's like a necessary card that you need, especially being so hard to cast. Like Grand Abolisher, people have to make like conscious decisions to play those cards, and have to make a constant effort to make sure they have double white on the turn they're trying to go off, which is a challenge in like Blue Farm, TNT even, and these other decks where sometimes you're a soul type base splashing white. If you're splashing white for silence effects, is a 2 white version of it good enough? Who knows? It probably is. I'm just here giving you guys my thoughts and opinions on it. And then last point, stifles are now more relevant than they ever been before. A lot of people listening are going to be like, no, Bailey, you just play Fibblefip. That's why you're on stifles. Frenchman's Sacrifice is just a card that Rog decks are playing, Fibblefip is playing, Thrasios decks are playing, Derevi is playing, and it's just a stifle effect with a non-creature spell added to it. So now more than ever, all the blue decks you can most realistically count on there being at least one stifle for your Ranger Captain, and it's paying 3 mana to tutor an Esper Sentinel and spending 1 more mana, so a 4 mana Esper Sentinel worth in CDH? I think the answer is no. Yeah, I just don't think it's worth risking your Ranger Captain getting stifled with an actual stifle just being in almost every blue deck now. I don't think it's a realistic risk you can take. Before Frenchman's Sacrifice, sure, I could see it being reasonable. Unless you're against Fibblefip, and then whoever's playing Fibblefip is holding up a stifle. Because that's what they do. They wait until you're about to win the game and then stop you from winning. That's what decks are designed to do. And Ranger Captain is good at stopping wins. I will 100% agree with that. But I think that's the problem. In a world of CDH where we're trying to win in an 80-minute time period and you want to play control, Ranger Captain is a great control card. But try winning the game with it. You can't. If there's 2 Ranger Captains, that thing's going to time, and it doesn't matter unless you're Atlas playing Kenrith where you use activation. Sisay can probably run it because they don't care if you clone it because they're not going to use the goddamn stack. But if you're using the stack to win the game, I think it's a disservice to yourself to play Ranger Captain. Because as soon as there's a clone, you're getting 1 point instead of 5. And last time I checked, in order to make top 10, you need to get 5 points at least once. Most likely twice in order to make top 10, top 16 in any tournament. So that's why I'm asking people to, not even asking, recommending people to stop running Ranger Captain. And I put my money where my mouth is. In Blue Garden, I wasn't on Ranger Captain Avios. I top forward with that, John. In Timno Rayhan, I wasn't on Ranger Captain Avios because I don't believe in the card. I think if there's 2 of them out and one of them is your opponent's, you don't win the game. And I think that's such a bad place to be in this format, where if there's a card in your deck that if it gets cloned, you can no longer win the game, that's a terrible spot to be in. And why would I want to risk that when there's so many other playable cards in the format that give you more of a benefit or attack at a different angle to where your opponents are going to expect you to be? And that's why I'm not going to be playing Ranger Captain and thinking any of my decks. I played Zur last night on Thursday, and I was playing Ranger Captain. I'm going to be real, and it did feel really good. I was in a 3-pod, and they couldn't remove it or clone it, and I was able to win the next turn. In scenarios like that, the card's phenomenal. But in a realistic tournament where you have 3 other players and they all know what to do and they all know what to expect if you get to your turn with a Ranger Captain, you ain't gonna win the game with it. And I'm sorry if that you think that's not true. I've been to so many tournaments and that's been the case with a Ranger Captain. And I'm tired of playing a bad card because the world thinks it's a staple. I don't think there needs to be a staple in the format um, that loses you the game if your opponent clones it. But yeah, that's the video. Sorry if I went on like a little high box, like stood on my high box at the end of it. But that's how I generally feel about the card. If you disagree, let me know. Um, Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm stupid. It's okay. I'm still gonna believe what I believe. Um, I said the same thing about Oppo and Dranith, and guess what's not a staple in every white and black deck right now? Oppo and Dranith. I think people will take a look at the format and realize what's actually happening with those cards, and then they change their ways. So we'll see what happens with Ranger. Obviously, it's a great card, and if you don't cut it, I absolutely agree with your decision. I'm gonna lose the card plenty of times in my future. I'm gonna probably play a card over it and then lose the game because it's not a Ranger captain, and I'm fine with that. But that's my opinion. Thank you for listening. I hope you guys have a great life. Live your best life. If you don't, oh well. And see you on the flip side.